how I went from zero to $5,000 as a mobile notary. If you stick until the end of this video, I'll explain everything that I did to help me get to the process and probably some of the tools that you can use to avoid going down the traps that wasted me a lot of time. So how did I get to 5,000 a month as a mobile notary? Honestly, it was a struggle in the beginning because when I first got out of college, I was like, okay, cool. I need to do something that can bring me in money. And long story short, my uncle was like, hey, you should look at the notary work. And then I was like, what? Notaries don't make any money. Like they make like $10, $15, $20. And then he was talking about doing mobile notary work, which makes more. So after I did my research, I got my commission and I was like, okay, cool. Let me take these courses. Let me learn this information. And then let me figure out how to make some money. So this is kind of what I did to start off. So in the very beginning, I didn't know about signing services and just marketing in general. I was just becoming a notary and I was like, okay, cool. Let me just do what I need to do to try to and be creative so I can try to bring some business in. So what I did naturally is what many people do. I went ahead, created the LLC, and then at that point I was created LLC, and then at that point I was like, all right, let me just make a website. Because when people go into business, that's the first thing you hear, like make a website, make a website. So I made a website, and then it got to the point where it's like, okay, now what? You got a website, you got a business. What do you do? So then at that point, I started researching, doing some marketing, and I was like, okay, maybe what I need to do is go to different businesses and talk to people. Because at first I was like, what type of clients do I even get? Because a lot of people, you become a mobile notary, you become a notary, and then it's like, okay, so what does your clientele look like? And if you're new to the business, you don't know that. It might be attorneys, it might be people in the healthcare field, it might be people at tow companies and just one-offs and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, when I first got my first job, I think it came in through Google My Business. I created a profile at that point, and then I think as time went on, someone just booked me through the Google My Business. And after I got that person, that first client I think was at a healthcare facility for elderly people. So then that kind of like opened my mind to make me believe like, oh, okay, so the type of clients that I might be getting are elderly people. So then that kind of gave me like my first data point as to knowing what type of customers I would get. But to actually get to that 5,000, I started going to different healthcare facilities. I think I went to even a hospital at one point, just not knowing any better, and talking to the people at the front desk, like how can I get business and how can I get more business from you all, and just talking to them and trying to get some like advice. And what I did in the beginning was try to leave my business cards at the beginning of at the front of the healthcare facility, so that if anybody needed a notary, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, cool, they'll see somebody right there at the front. But what I didn't understand back then is you don't really want to be chasing clients, which I was doing along the journey. You want to be doing things that's attracting clients, and it makes a big difference. You want people calling you. So the question is like, all right, how do I get people to call me? What do I do to get people to want to call me and book? And that's when I was like, okay, I need to double down on my Google My Business, because the competition out there has way better Google My Business profile set up. Excuse me. And I was like, all right, if they have a better Google My Business profile, let me just start there. Let me just start there and make sure that I have all the reviews I need. Let me make sure that I have nice images up and things of that sort. I want to start off making sure that, all right, at least that was good. Because if that, I'm sneezing a lot. Because if that brought me my first client, what else could bring me clients? I was like, if that brought me into clients, then if I double down on that, that can bring me back more clients. So I was like, okay, cool. I made sure I was getting my reviews up on Google My Business. And then at that point, I was like, all right, every now and then I would get like a call. It would probably be like every 3-4 days, I would get a call. So that was cool. So I knew that the concept worked. Then at that point, after I set up my Google Business profile, I kind of chilled for a little bit and started working on other ventures, because at that point, the mobile notary business wasn't making me that much money. It was I think about 2 years later or 3 years later, when I wanted to circle back to it, that I actually started taking it more seriously. And I came along and I was like, all right, you know what? This brought me money in the past. Let me circle back to this and try to put some more effort towards it. So at that point, I was like, okay, let me see if I can run ads toward this. And then I think that was the first time that I started doing Google ads. And then I was just testing it out. Honestly, because I didn't know if it would work or not. And then when I did it, I think I started off at about $10 a day using a specific Google setup inside Google Ads. And then that started working. Every now and then I would get more and more customers, more and more customers, more and more customers. And I was like, okay. So the customers are not now starting to come in. So that started to help bring in more of a consistent clientele, because not only did I leave my cards in certain healthcare facilities and talk to them at the front desk, but I also started running ads in my area. And then what also happened, so those are two different ways that it started bringing in business. And then from those two things, it also started bringing in more so consistency. It started bringing in more so consistency. So I was like, all right, these are two revenue streams from the notary business that are bringing in that consistency. What can I do next? That's also going to bring something in. So at that point, I was like, all right. After I started getting those jobs from Google My Business, I think at one point I got an estate planning job, which I knew that had to do with lawyers, because I actually went to a law office and notarized some documents. So I was like, okay, cool. If I can find a way to team up with lawyers, they could possibly bring me in some more business. So at that point, I had a lot of background and like knowledge from doing past e-commerce business, and I learned how to like scrape lists. So that's basically finding a list long full of attorney offices, and got their emails, and I got their addresses and all those types of things. So once I got them, I just started calling them one by one. I eventually made a script. Hey, this is knowledge, blah, 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 blah. If you guys need anybody, I would love to help. I can do this, and that. So it was just calling. It went to just calling them one by one. And trust me, y'all, at that point, I was just calling a lot of attorney offices, calling them. And then as time went on, they didn't need me right there in the moment. But let's say like 1 or 2 weeks down the line, they would ask for some business, and they would ask for me to notarize a document. So at that point, I would notarize the document for them. And once they understood that I could do a good job, then at that point, they would always call me when they need something else. So then it was like, okay, cool. Once they got familiarized with my face, because they don't want to keep switching around notaries, they would just use me again, and then use me again. And then as I kept calling, I started getting more sales and more calls. As I kept calling, so let's say for like every 100, or for like it was 100. It was probably like for every 50, I'll probably get 2 weeks down the line. But once they come in, that kind of just added to the pot of income as well. So then on top of that, I signed up with some signing services when I actually started learning what they were. I started taking some courses, and then some loan signings started coming in, and I started doing that. So it wasn't just like the money in the beginning came from like one source. It came from doing like several different things, because you had the going to the place in person, speaking to people, you had the running the ads, you had the reaching out to the attorneys, you had the signing up for the signing services. And what I also did is, when I started offering more services, I started teaming up with other notaries. There was a lot of tactics I did, but these are probably the 5 that got it off the ground. And when I say team up with other notaries, I meant offering other services that I didn't really do that much. Like for apostilles, for example, I didn't really do that much apostilles. But once I started to market that service and I started getting apostille calls, I knew that I could call somebody else at that point. I knew that I can call somebody else that's a notary and say, hey, if you do my apostilles, I can do your estate planning. So that at that point, I was like, okay, cool. We can switch out jobs, and I can just take a little percentage of that job, and we can still get the job done. And I was like, okay, perfect. This works great. So at that moment, I was getting jobs from 5 different places. I was able to offer services that I didn't do that much. And then I was able to get money from that as well. So then at that point, I was like, okay, now I have some ways to get consistent income, and now money's coming in from these different sources. And then as the years go by, I kind of just started scaling and finding more tactics to help me build the business up and understand more. But what I really want people to understand is, like, when I started off, it wasn't just one method that I was doing. Well, I was really throwing like poop at the wall and seeing which one stuck. I'm like, all right, what actually sticks? What's actually going to work? And then a little bit worked from each. As the years went on, that actually built up my clientele base and gained me some consistency. And then I just kept learning along the way, doubling up, and then started making more money as time went on. So that's how I first started off. There's a lot of things that I'll do differently, but I wanted to just be honest with you guys and let you know how I got to like that first $5,000 a month in the notary business. And one of the things that I would avoid is wasting time not studying. So you want to take courses, you want to speak with people, you want to get ebooks, you want to do whatever you can to learn as much information as possible, because each piece of information that you learn something from is just going to add it back to your memory vault. All of those informations that you learn, you might not learn a lot from one course, But as long as you learn one new thing, that's going to add and help you. It's going to work in your favor because now you get new ideas on how to make money. But that's how I went to my first 5,000 as a mobile notary. If you guys want some help starting from scratch, or if you're a notary that wants more ways on making more money within the mobile notary business, click on the link down below. Book a call with me. We could talk. If you're a free notary and want some resources, or an experienced notary, click on that link down below as well. There's free resources there that you can download. It's a beginner bundle. It should help you out a lot. And then there's also a paid kit down there that you can get as well that gives you even more tools like phone scripts and the email templates that I was using. But yeah, that's how I did it. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification. And peace, love. Your boy Knowledge is out.